Hello and welcome. And it seems like today, no matter what I do, I can either get the microphone working or the webcam. So, which is a shame because I've got a new tiara. But anyway, this is where we are. And where we are is finally Season 1, Episode 1 of Stargate Atlantis, Part 1 of Rising. Before we get into this, it does seem as if the shorter videos are doing better online. So I will be doing it like that. I know, I personally like the longer essays when watching, but and yeah, I can be meandering, but I'll try and keep it short, which will mean that I will have to break some of the episodes up into shorter parts. That's just where we are. So yeah, here it is, Stargate Atlantis, Episode 1, Part 1, Rising. And we open to several million years into the past with Atlantis leaving Earth. And I would like to point out that this is the actress that we see in the SG1 Season 6 episode Frozen. And that Frozen is about an expedition finding a young frozen woman in the ice, I think in Antarctica, and she dies of the ancient illness. So I don't know if this is supposed to be the same character. I guess she's looking at this guy very sadly, and then she watches the ship leave. So I guess she stays and he goes, and I suppose Track Wiki or whatever will probably say it's the same person. I don't know. Anyway, so the Atlantis then decouples and leaves, and we jump to the present day and the Antarctic base where Jack was frozen, or where they find it's the ancient outpost, I just want to point out this is a very long elevator shaft. They had to drill through the ice to get the rings working, so that's a very, very long elevator shaft. We don't know who this guy is yet, although we'll soon. It is Peter Groden. I just took the screenshot to show you what the drone missiles look like, the squiddies. I really, really love the design. And yeah, the little hearts there is not for Peter, it's for the drones, obviously. In fact, as I was putting this together, I remembered I had this very nice little picture of the design of the drones. And then we follow Elizabeth as she walks from the elevator, first looking at what Groden is doing, and then looking on as Rodney and Carson are fighting over the chair. And already you can see the aesthetic of the series, which is very much like SG1, but also unlike it. You will see a lot of this architecture type featured throughout the series. And at this point, I do want to take a moment to talk about Dr. Rodney McKay. Now, I managed to watch large swaths of Atlantis before watching SG1. In fact, I went out of my way not to watch Stargate SG1 because I really liked MacGyver, the old one, and I really liked the Stargate movie a lot, and I was loath to watch SG1 and have it ruin two things I love. Also, I didn't really like Stargate the first time I watched it. This was back when the series had just finished, I think, but keep in mind, this was in Africa, internet wasn't a big thing there, it was really expensive, streaming services weren't a thing, and my husband had 5 episodes on a hard drive, which I think got copied from somewhere. I don't know, it was the thing back then. And I watched the Atlantis, the 5 episodes, but they were really badly done, or very grainy, and the sound was off, and I just didn't like it, mostly because I didn't like the design. And it's only after my best friend at the time, who had a serious crush on Rodney for some unknown reason, but she convinced me to give it another go, and in fact watch SG1, and I really liked it. so much so that I actually bought both series. So yeah, I'll say those 5 episodes were a preview. Anyway, so either way, I wasn't there when we first see Rodney in the SG-1 episodes. I just watched Atlantis and he was there, and he was just one of the characters when I first started watching it, and one of the characters my friend had a massive crush on, and so I wasn't there, I wasn't part of the audience who saw Rodney the first time when you tuned into the series and was like, oh no, this is McKay, that really awful person. Like, it was a bold choice. And in fact, it's a very bold choice considering that the first Weir was blonde. And no, I did not create this shipping page. I just found it, and apparently when you ship Rodney and Elizabeth, it's called a McWeir, which is weird enough. But Rodney makes it very clear in the SG-1 episodes, and in fact so much so that they refer to it back in the Atlantis episode, season 3, Endgame, or no, just the game, where Rodney has this thing for women with the choppy blonde hair, and which is exactly the way Jessica Steen looked as the first Weir. So I would have to wonder if would this series have taken Elizabeth and Rodney's relationship in a different direction if she'd stayed on? Would they have had to take his attraction to her into account? As is the first interaction between brunette Elizabeth and Rodney feels like just two colleagues who've been stuck under the ice for a long while. There's no spark there, but there's a lot of joking, which I really did love. I mean, David Hewlett has a very elastic face, and this is his face after Elizabeth teased him. He and Elizabeth aren't as fun as Daniel and Elizabeth, but I mean, I'll take it. I would also like to mention, in the background while Elizabeth was walking, we heard the announcement that General Jack O'Neill was 20 minutes outbound. In fact, we literally hear this as Elizabeth looks at the drone missile. And then we see Carson being reluctant to sit in the chair. We also hear that you need an ancient gene to use it, which is why Sam and Daniel didn't just sit down and use it after Jack did, and that Carson actually discovered the gene that activates the ancient technology. We also learn that Rodney doesn't have the gene, which really does annoy him. Carson has the gene, and we get a little montage, and it does seem Elizabeth loves the idea of discovery, but she's also, she also likes teasing Rodney, and she holds the alien tech in very high regard. And I have to say, this is 2.5 minutes into the episode, and we've already learned quite a lot about what this series needs to make it work. I mean, it was not completely organic, all of it, but it was as close as damn it to it. Now, I mentioned this because I think Atlantis has some of the best writing I've ever seen in a series, especially season 1, which I've often heard being criticized as being the worst of the episodes or the worst of the seasons. And yet every episode and every scene in every episode works towards the final season, towards the season finale. It's like they had this clear view. They were going about this knowing where they were going, and they are taking steps to get there, but making it interesting along the way. It's very not the way Star Wars is written these days. For instance, I feel this entire series, but especially the first season, was a work of art. Even this scene, this little scene with Peter Groden working on the squid, that is a bit of setup within a setup. One which also gives us some relevant info dumping. But this is also definitely a setup. From the announcement to Carson's reluctance to sit in the chair, all of it is for the introduction of John Shepard. Now, you'd think it it was a setup for Jack, actually. There's a lot, they say General Jack O'Neill's on his way and everyone knows Jack. But it's actually a setup for John, which would be this series' Jack O'Neill. But it is also a storyline setup or setup for storylines and plot points that will be relevant much later on. Anyway, Daniel interrupts them at the chair in a very Daniel way. And yeah, I'm still miffed we never get to see his and Elizabeth's relationship grow. Daniel then explains they might have found the address to Atlantis with an 8th symbol. That's because it's very far away. And look how happy Elizabeth is at the idea of being able to go. And look how Rodney is reconsidering his every life choice. And we're 4 minutes in and we are introduced to John, even though we really are meant to think that we are being introduced to Jack and his pilot. Then we cut to Rodney bullying Carson into sitting in the chair. Carson actually gets it working, and immediately the drone lights up and escapes. So you've got payoff for the setup with Peter and the chair and the drone. And of course, it immediately sets off after the inbound helicopter. In this tense, action-packed sequence, we're also shown what a fantastic pilot John is. I mean, at this point, he isn't even really a character. We don't even see his face. I mean, what little of it you see, it's nondescript. We mostly just hear him. I suppose if you knew Joe Flanagan from other projects, you would have recognized him. But the first time I saw this, I did not know this character was going to be anything. He's a faceless guy. All the focus you think was on Jack at this point. And yet even here, we learn two very important things about him. One, he really likes flying and he's really good at it. Like, he has flown almost every type of flying machine he could get his hands on. That's his big thing in life. He can fly anything. And he's probably a much better pilot than Jack is, which, I mean, isn't too far off. I mean, Jack hasn't flown in a while. He also often ignores Jack's direction. Every time Jack would say, go up, go right, and then John would just ignore him. And he's correct. I mean, John is correct every time, which I think goes to show that he has a very natural instinct for flying. And then secondly, we learn he's not good at taking orders at all. And I suppose the third thing you could mention is that he remains calm under pressure. He does save them. And all of this while at this point I was still completely oblivious that he will be the main character. I also liked the short bit between Elizabeth and Carson. She just realized Carson messed up and she's asking Carson, what the hell, without even saying a word. And then poor Carson saying, he tells her, I told you I was the wrong person. And then Elizabeth has to remain calm as she leads Carson to shut down the drone. And even though the stunt actors had to commit to jumping face first into the snow, and I have to admit, I often wondered if this was actually shot, I suppose not in Antarctica, but did they really find some snowy places? Like, where was this shot? I could probably Google it, but I'm not going to. Anyway, the poor stunt guy had to face plant into snow. And this is where John is introduced to stuff not being as he thought they were. And yet, even so, we are being still being misdirected, as the scene jumps to Jack and Daniel doing their thing, which they do a lot. And John's just trailing behind the two characters that we know and love. I mean, even after he is finally given the name Major John Shepard, he is still just a background character. And Daniel informs Jack and us that Atlantis is in the Pegasus galaxy. No, I don't know how he figured that out from the 8th symbol, but anyway, that's what it is. And Elizabeth seems pretty excited to go. Rodney, not so much. But then again, the character of Rodney does go through a very steep character growth, and this is just fine. Everything's fine. He's fine. No, he's not fine. Look, I guess at this point, Rodney's dead set on being miserable, so he might as well be miserable in the Pegasus Galaxy. I don't know. He's not fine. He's not fine. And then we come to a scene that is as much iconic as it is ironic. Rodney tells Jack they will need the ZPM, and Daniel has to explain to Jack that he means ZPM. Rodney only said ZPM because Rodney is Canadian, and then Jack turns immediately to him and says, "I'm sorry." And I would have you keep in mind that in this room, in this scene, every actor except Richard Dean Anderson is Canadian. Anyway, Jack also denies the request. So there you have it. He's sorry and no. Meanwhile, John is wandering through the base unsupervised with only Jack's earlier warning not to touch anything. And he overhears Carson talking about using the chair and confronts him about it. And this leads to some nice exposition. For those who have been watching SG1, this is all old news. But for anyone who just joined the show, this is a lovely way of getting the relevant information across. John knows literally nothing about the Stargate, and so it makes sense for Carson to fill him in on the basics. And I know I keep coming back to this, but Daniel's trying to persuade Jack that they need the ZPM. And this is Elizabeth's face when Jack tells her it's probably a one-way trip. She's just way too excited about this trip. And on the other hand, this is Rodney's face. He's not excited. He's not fine. Meanwhile, Carson is telling John about the ancient gene, and let me remind you, when I first watched this, I still had no idea John was going to be part of the expedition. I really thought this was just an easy way for us to get used to who Carson is and him being able to exposition dump for our sake. But then John sits down and all the lights come on because apparently he has the ancient gene. And he might be a bit confused, but at this point the penny for me at least was dropping. Anyway, Carson calls Elizabeth again, and she seems to be doing a lot of running in this episode, like one crisis to the other. Anyway, this is how she and Rodney meet John for the first time. And then Rodney goes and asks John to envision their place in the solar system. And it's obvious that John has an affinity and a knack and a natural ability with the ancient tech. And again, look how happy Elizabeth is to see this. And look at Rodney. He's not having a good day. Anyway, seems like Jack was convinced to let Elizabeth and her team go to Atlantis, but she also asks him to help her convince John to go, as he seems to be really good with the ancient tech. And this isn't a massive plot point, but I'm going to mention it. You see, I'm not doing this to give a really good critique on Atlantis. Like, really, it's not. I'm super biased. I'm talking about the series because I really, really love it, and I really wish other people would like it half as much as I do. And of course, as I mentioned, I keep on talking about this to hubby, and the guy's like, he's heard it all. So now I'm talking to other people about it, hoping you like the series half as much as I do. And a large part of what I do like is the little character moments. These are very well thought through characters. And it's the little moments, like an entire room full of Canadians poking fun at their own accent. And then, such as Jack telling Elizabeth that she probably doesn't want John to be on the expedition because he's not very good at following orders. And this is her face when she tells him, "I've read your own file, General, please." And then Jack looking like this, and it's like, I also love how the focus is subtly shifting away from SG1 onto the Atlantis team. it isn't in your face, but every now and then we're given a glance into how Elizabeth and Rodney and even Carson, they are more comfortable with this new spot they're in. They're comfortable where they are. But Jack is the odd man out. Although, don't think he doesn't have a final inning to play, because he then tries to convince John to go on the Atlantis mission by looking at him. Yeah, he was being succinct, but anyway, I would also like to point out that in this scene, at least John has a face. And this is where I'm going to end this. I think it's been 15 minutes. We're 15 minutes into the episode, but I think a lot of groundwork has been done for what this series needs. We had some exposition, most of it very organic. We had a nice little misdirect. We had some jokes. We had some insight into the characters. And I have to say, I enjoyed it. It wasn't the most exciting part, but for what it was good. And yeah, I especially liked the characters, including John, who we haven't seen much of at this point. He is also the everyman, I suppose, that we have to side with. He's the one who doesn't know anything. He's just been told there are aliens out there in the Stargate program and drones, and there's this supposedly one-way trip to another galaxy from which, they will not be able to return. I mean, that's what one-way trip means. Anyway, and so when he tells Jack that he isn't into it immediately and that it feels like a pretty personal decision, we can feel with him. I mean, yeah, we're excited to go on the mission because that's why we're watching, but you can kind of see where he's coming from. This guy doesn't know any of it. Like, he just heard that there's an alien device that will take them far away and he might never return. So it's not even I know he's a soldier, but when soldiers are deployed, they are usually deployed for a set amount of time. So if they survive whatever conflict they're going to, they will be able to return. But they just told John these are aliens and we'll go there and maybe you'll never ever come back. In fact, he doesn't even know if they will survive the trip. So yeah, having John have this reaction, it's a very good way to bring all the stakes back home. It's a personal journey. This isn't big world things, because SG-1 can get very out there with the big things, like we're fighting the Goa'uld and we're fighting Anubis and we're fighting for the world and we're fighting for galaxies. Like they okay, on this way, at this point in time, they're on their way to fight the Ori, so they're fighting for multiple galaxies. And here we have one man who just found out he has a special gene, and he has to make a very personal decision. And it is personal for him, and it's personal for us. We have to decide to go with him. Actually, it's a very personal thing for all of them, and I think the smaller stakes here is a very good choice. In fact, I'm going to continue a little bit with the episode, because it's very much brought home to us that this is a thing for each and everyone. It's a personal thing for everyone. So we have this little montage where first Elizabeth is telling Simon, or Nareem, that she is leaving, and during her voiceover we see Ford saying goodbye to his grandparents. They don't know where he's going. And we see Carson's mom making him a final dinner. She doesn't know where he's going or if she'll see him again. And we see Rodney give his cat to his neighbor to look after. And we actually see John tossing a coin to see what he should do. I would also like to take a moment to note that Carson, who won't be in the main cast until season 2, gets a goodbye scene. And so does Ford, who is in the main cast in season 1. But I don't think at this point we even know his name. it's a weird decision. In this part of the episode, there's a lot of focus on Carson, and yet he's not part of the main cast, and then there's almost none on Ford. I mean, introducing John the way they did was a misdirect, and it was to keep us entertained, but that Ford ended up being included in John's away team, that was a straight up surprise. If I had guessed who the fourth member of the away team or the off-world team would be, I would have thought Peter Groden. I mean, he has a name, everything. We've seen more of him at this point. And that, I suppose, is the final thing I would like to say about this part of the series or season or what episode maybe. Everyone has a function to fulfill. Every series has to have certain functions. You have those who know, those who can deduct, but especially when when it's a spin-off series set within a world with some major world building that's already been done, you need a new character, a character totally oblivious to what's going on, to give the other characters a reason to tell him what's going on, so that you can build that world again through some exposition. And I think Ford was supposed to be that. Except he already was briefed on everything, and the person who really doesn't know anything, although I think he was supposed to just be the action man leader, is John. John doesn't know anything, and so all exposition is directed at him, which makes Ford pretty redundant, and that's, I think, the main problem I have with Ford. I don't know if it's the actor or if it's the writers or the directors, but I feel the entire season didn't have a handle on Ford. And he could have been a great character, but I also think they didn't really know what to do with him. They kind of knew there had to be a fourth person on the off-world team, and Ford was it, but they haven't figured out what Ford's function in the bigger narrative should be. In fact, he feels like he's a placeholder for when they finally figure it out. And I think that's why he became redundant. I mean, he is redundant, and then he is like a placeholder, and so I get why they had to write him off the series. I do like Evil Ford. Gotta say, Evil Aiden is very cool, and I wish we saw more of him. But I don't know. I feel Rainbow Sun Franks was done dirty, but I don't know where the blame lies. And maybe there isn't blame. Maybe it's just one of those things that happened. Anyway, the rest of it was really good. I'm sorry Ford wasn't up to scratch. Anyway, that's it for the first part. This is long enough. There's still a lot. We're 15 minutes in, so there's still a lot of the episode left to talk about. But we'll do that next time. And until then, like, subscribe, comment, share, you know the drill. And I'll see you next time.